This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. Vancouver lawyers Dumel and Boscovich. Remember where you were on June 15th last year? Well, if you don't, you're either drunk and in the midst of it all, or you're out of the country, because that was the night that we, many will say, we demonstrated who we really were. We demonstrated that we're kind of an adolescent culture. And a great many people went completely medieval downtown around the old post office site on Georgia. That was the night of the riot following the Boston Bruins 4-love win over the Vancouver Canuckleheads. It was a disaster, and it will go down in history as a shameful, shameful event. Now, can we prevent that? Can we avoid it in the future? We certainly hope so. And what are we doing about the people who behaved so badly? Sergeant Howard Chow with the Vancouver Police Department is here to explain exactly what we're doing. Howard, great to see you.
Thanks,
so how soon after that dreadful night did VPD gather together and determine what the next step had to be?
The very next day.
Really?
You bet.
Tell me what happened.
So, like many major police departments across Canada, we don't have 60, 70 police officers hiding away in a bunker waiting for a big event like this to take place.
Right.
We had to get together an integrated unit, which is what we did. Develop a strategy, develop investigative techniques that are going to deal with this type of investigation. It's the biggest of its type in Canada. It's also one that's totally grounded in forensic video, which is nowhere in the world has this much forensic video been put together, processed, and analyzed.
Where did it all come from?
Everybody. You'll see back in '94 we had a riot, and we had about 100 hours all in one format, and that was VHS.
Yes.
This year we had every type of format you could imagine. Everybody with an Android phone, with an iPhone, with CCTV. Yes. Right. Everybody was out videotaping what was going on.
Yes.
And so we had to process all those hours. We had over 5,000 hours of video.
But how did you get them? I mean, did Joe and Jane Public say, look, here's my Android video?
Yeah, you know, like, I mean, I think when you're talking at the beginning here, you're talking about the outrage and what it did to Vancouver's reputation.
Yes.
I think everybody else felt the same as well.
Yeah.
And we were getting buried under, and people that wanted to help, wanted to do something about this, wanted to hold the people accountable. And that's what they did. We were getting video dropped off. We were getting people sending information in. They were calling 911. They were reporting on their employees. They were reporting on their neighbors. And they were being outed on social media, on Facebook, on YouTube. And that was a big part of this investigation. So all these things that in the days to follow June 15th was getting it together. And we ended up pulling together an integrated team of over 60 police officers and analysts from across the Lower Mainland and out in the Fraser Valley to help us with this investigation. And we've been working strong ever since. 8 months later, and it's just timely. Today we ended up forwarding even more charges to Crown.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we're up to, what are we up to? 350 charges against 125 rioters that we've recommended to Crown, and there's more coming.
Let me, Howard, we're looking at the big picture, and I want to go back to that big picture, but just hold that for a second, because something just occurred to me. Take one kid and tell me the story of how anyone, I don't know who, I mean, you and I haven't pre-discussed this, but just, and don't give me a name, but a person that you've already met and heard from. Pick one of these rioters and tell me what this kid finally admitted was going through his stupid head.
We've got a different story, and I guess that's why it's so topical in the media, is that every rioter that we're recommending charges against is a different story.
Really?
Every rioter comes with his own reason, showed up downtown doing, you know, different things but the same thing. They were all headed down to enjoy Game 7.
Yeah.
But by and large, most of these people that we're finding, that we're recommending charges for so far, don't have criminal records. They don't have their regular kids that are either going to school, living at home, holding jobs, hoping for a bright future like everybody else did at their age. And they got caught up for whatever reason, and I'm not going to be a psychologist here because I think that has been talked about often by media in terms of what led them to do this. But I can say that, there's consequences. Whatever they did in those few hours is going to have dramatic consequences over their next lifetime.
Yeah, tell me about two different kinds of person. Have you already met in your investigations one kid who's been truly, truly remorseful and sickened by his own behavior, and in contrast, have you met someone who's kind of unrepentant and is not going there?
Yeah, and we are seeing this, the investigators themselves, the forensic analysts themselves are going through hours and hours and hours of video, and they're seeing this. They're seeing some people, some of the rioters that are going from, they're not only kicking a car window in, they're kicking a car window in, half a block later they're smashing a display window for a store, they're punching somebody in the side of the head, they're starting a car on fire, they're involved in all sorts of criminal acts. They're literally on a crime spree. Yeah. And then you've got another kid who just happened to be caught up at the moment and jumped in because maybe their friends were. And for both those people, I mean, there's some really serious consequences. Like I said, we're hitting everybody with participating in a riot, which is an indictable offense, which is a serious offense.
But have you had a kid actually sit in interview crying and saying, I'm just disgusted that I can't believe I did this?
We've had all walks, you bet. Yeah. We've had those that come in and are remorseful and wish they never had done that and don't know what came over them. Yeah. And then we've had those in the early days after the riot, as you recall, where somebody would come in and they'd give up, or they'd turn themselves in, they'd say, look, okay, you know what, that was me jumping on the car. Yeah. And they'd stop there, and they want to own up to that. And then after we processed all our video, and we got back from Indianapolis with all this video now, and we entered it into our data bank, and we realized, hey, guess what, you didn't just jump on the car, you also punched this person in the head. You also set this car on fire. You also did this all this other stuff that you never admitted to. But it just kind of illustrates why we needed to do and take the steps we did. Yes. And the time it took.
That's interesting. That's the full range, because that is a character in crime, the guy who confesses to something relatively small.
Absolutely.
And meanwhile, he's got a truckload of other stuff back there.
Yeah, and with our advent of what we developed in our lab that we've got now in Vancouver, now we can just enter it in like a Google search. So we can punch in yourself, your brown jacket, blue shirt, and colorful tie, and all of a sudden it'll show in a matter of seconds all the list of video that we have. So then we realize, no, you know what, this person was a little bit more active than he's owning up to in the early days.
Did you say something that I just caught back, a sentence or two back about Indianapolis? Did you say, what's in Indianapolis?
So what we had to do was, we ended up with 5,000 hours of video, and people think, we were getting comments back, look, in a hockey game, you can go to Toronto in a matter of seconds, they can tell you if it's a goal or not a goal. Yeah. What's taken so long? Yeah. So, but the difference is, we've got to be able to make this, this is evidence. Yes. So it has to be able to go to court, withstand all the scrutiny of defense, withstand the scrutiny of the judge, to say that, you haven't manipulated this video, that there hasn't been a frame taken out, hasn't been compressed, that we're giving this guy straight goods here. To do that, we had to take this 5,000 hours of video down to Indianapolis, the only lab of its type that could handle this sort of thing. This lab down there was designed for Homeland Security down the States. In the event of a terrorist attack overseas, they can pull all the video, they can do what they need to do, and they can pump out the results they need. So they were willing to take on our task, and they brought in 50 analysts from across the world. The best of the best came to Indianapolis to help us with our venture. Yeah. And it was all done on the association's dime. We just provided accommodations, and they provided all the help, all the staff, and they processed our video. It took us 2 weeks to process what it would have taken us 2 years to do here. Wow. And once we got back 2 weeks later, we had our first round of charges.
Now we'll get to charges after the break, and what's going to happen. But speaking of on whose dime, is this a windfall for defense lawyers, and/or will it break the back of legal aid? I mean, how many people are going to need defense here?
I mean, it comes at a price tag. You know, and we acknowledge that. The investigation will come at a price tag.
Yes.
The damage to the city comes at a price tag.
Do you know the budget that's been set aside just for your team?
No, I don't. No, I don't. It's you know, I can say that the numbers when we get everything rolled in, it'll be a it'll be a cost to it.
Yeah, it'll be 6 figures minimum.
Yeah, I would think so. What happens is, you know, and we've got people that say, well, why are we bothering? Why do we care? It's 7-8 months later, and we're going.
No.
Imagine if it was your house in the block that was broken into, and 3 houses, 3 of your neighbors also got broken into, and we only solved 2 of them. And then would you stop and say, why do we care? We've got 2 of them solved. Let's leave the rest. These are victims that we've talked to on a regular basis, and they're saying, we care. We really want this to happen. We want these people to be held accountable.
Yes.
The city needs to see
Who are the victims?
The victims are the merchants. They're the people that were assaulted. They're your good Samaritans like Robert Mackay that we featured last week in a press conference. They want to see justice brought to these rioters. And you know, the residents of Vancouver deserve that. So 8 months later, the charges are still coming. We've come out with our 4th round today, like I mentioned, and there's many more rounds waiting in the wings here.
Yeah, I won't belabor this, but we just have another minute or so before the break, Howard. But is there some sense at VPD that for us personally, for the force, this is an embarrassment, it's a shame, it's a disaster, and we can't let this kind of thing go?
Well, I can tell you this investigation is going to be a shining light, or is going to be a defining moment for us in that we're entering or venturing into investigations that we haven't been before. I mean, you could pretty much say that this is the largest investigation of its type across Canada, where this many people will be charged at the end of it. We're, you know, crossing new frontiers with forensic video and the processing it and handling of the video as evidence in court. In terms of social media, you know, we're touching new ground again in terms of investigation of this scope and magnitude, where we're examining this evidence and this medium in a way that has never been looked at in this fashion before.
Wild. It's wild. It's interesting. But tell me before the break, what's the funniest single thing that's happened so far in the investigation?
The funniest single thing? Boy, there's so many.
Really?
Well, there's. I hear stories from investigators where you'll get some suspects that are showing up for their interview after the fact with the same clothes that they wore on the night of the riot.
Why?
Maybe that's the only set of clothes they have in their wardrobe. I'm not too sure.
Not too bright.
How
How about the guy who showed up with the T-shirt that said, "I'm a dope"?
Yeah, that's right.
No, okay. We'll take a little break. Our guest is Sergeant Howard Chow of the Vancouver Police Department, and we're talking about the riot, of course, and the massive investigation that is following. Let's take a little breather and remind you that you can communicate with us at any time by going to davidberner.com, sending us an email, and we take a moment to thank these lovely people who support this program here on Shaw Community Television, Cable 4. Back in a minute. ACM Wealth Management. Vancouver lawyers Dumal and Boscovich. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. The Vancouver Police Department is working overtime to make sure that there are a number of arrests and we hope convictions following the dreadful riot last June after Vancouver's loss in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And Sergeant Howard Chow has been good enough to join us today and talk about that. So we've talked about how it all happened and how you guys started to follow up. Now, what was the number, 300 and something?
350 recommended charges so far.
Okay, when you
and
say
climbing.
recommended, what does that mean? Who do you have to hand them to?
So in BC,
Yeah.
we have a charge approval process, which means that when we investigate, we'll put together a report and we'll forward it over to Crown Counsel, and then there'll be some dialogue, obviously, throughout this back and forth, and that's where it's at now, is with Crown. So of the 350 charges recommended, they've approved 129 against 47 rioters. So
Really?
yeah, you bet.
129 charges against 47 people.
Yeah, that's right.
And what are the kinds of charges? Everything.
All over. You bet. We've got
Destruction of private property, public property, assault.
Yeah, and this is one thing that I'm glad you brought this up, is that a lot of people are thinking, you know, in terms of all these charges, why are we bothering?
Yeah.
And it's and when we relate to them, we say, hey, look, we're not going after those that are standing around mocking it up for the cameras. We're not going around going after those that are sitting there on the sidelines cheering the rioters on. We're going after those that are breaking into stores, they're looting, they're starting cars on fire, they're smashing out windows, they're assaulting people. These are the type of criminals we're after. And once we tell them that, then they get it. And they generally say, yes, we should be holding those people accountable.
Yeah, so what's your sense of the Crown prosecutor? They must be very tough, I would think, very stringent about, okay, can we win this one in each case? As they look at each of the recommendations you give them, they must be looking very carefully.
It's huge.
Will this fly?
Yeah, absolutely. And so they should, and so we should.
Yes.
You know, this is part of the process. We want to make sure that we put the strongest case forward so we get the most serious sentences by the courts. And, you know, it's not a simple mischief report that we put in. It's not a simple B&E report that we put in. These are 500 plus pages of reports that we're putting in. We're going after, the hammer for us is participating in a riot. That's the big offense. And so we have
Is that something that's actually on the books?
It's on the books, you bet. And it's a serious offense.
That is a criminal offense,
You bet.
participating in a riot. Okay.
I'll give you an idea. Back in Penticton, I believe it was 2002, they charged somebody with participating in a riot, and the sentence was 9 months. It was later appealed, and for somebody with virtually no criminal record, it was later appealed, and the sentence was reduced to 6 months jail time. So it's a pretty serious offense, as you can imagine, especially if the day before you were a student who didn't have a criminal record living at home. Next thing you know, you may be facing jail time. So we're hopeful that the courts treat this as serious as we would expect and as the public would expect.
It would be very interesting to hear, and perhaps you've heard already, from some of the parents of some of these kids. Now, I'm not talking about the absolute crazy criminals, but some of the kids who just got swept up in the moment. Have you heard from some of the parents who are like ready to just rap their kids on the head?
You bet. Anecdotally, you know, we'll hear from investigators that are telling us stories of some parents that are very helpful, cooperative. They want their kids to do the right thing. They're bringing their kids actually down to the police station when they turn themselves in. And you'll have others that are creating obstacles, and they're denying, and they're saying, no, it couldn't be my child that did this. So we're getting all walks, as you'd expect when you're dealing with this many people.
And we should be very clear about something, because some people will raise this issue, and I think inappropriately. You're getting diversity. You're getting every kind of person, every color, every shade, every ethnic background, every size and shape, right?
That's right. There's not a cookie cutter for a rioter here. They're all different types of people that are coming forward, and we're finding that out. And we're getting them from all areas of the Lower Mainland. You know, I think we put out some new numbers today. 83% of those rioters that we've recommended charges against so far. So of the 125 rioters, 83% are outside of Vancouver.
Really?
They don't reside in Vancouver. Absolutely. And this is something that, and you know, obviously we've got a ways to go, and that number may change, but it's been fairly consistent.
And is it only Vancouver? I mean, is anybody else, let's say some of those folks came from outside Vancouver, are other municipalities doing anything?
Yeah, I mean, they're part of the integrated riot investigation team, and they've put forward, you know, we've got 8 different agencies represented, from the RCMP to Delta to Abbotsford, New West. Right. Yeah, we've got 8 different agencies.
Okay, so from watching, all of us pop culture fans, from watching 50 years of procedural melodrama on TV, cops or robbers stories on TV. We're all used to hearing, the guy who runs the show saying, let's close some files.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So are you getting some real pressure from City Hall or from Jim Chow or for anybody saying, let's get some convictions here?
Those are the pressures we put on ourselves. And I would say that...
okay. Because for you, that's a success. You want that.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can tell you that, just coming into this investigation, I came in probably September to join the team.
Yeah.
And, I was like everybody else wondering, where are these charges? What's taking so long? And we would like to press charges and have these people sentenced and in court the days after the riot. But that isn't the system we work in. And we have to make sure that the work is done right so that these charges do withstand the court.
They got to stick and
absolutely.
stay. So one of the ironies of this, Howard, is that we all, those of us who are just sitting back watching all this, again, because we've watched so many TV movies, we assume that if you've got videotape and if you've got your Android, it's a lock. Yeah. But that's not the case.
Not the case. No.
Why?
When you've got defense counsel that's going to pour over the evidence, and when you have thousands of hours of video, and when you have a thing that we talk about earlier on in the investigation about double jeopardy, we want to make sure.
How do you get double jeopardy?
Well, in terms of, let's say.
I thought that was just for murder trials.
Here we are with our big offense, participating in a riot.
Okay.
And then we can only charge that once. But we've got this person right now on committing a mischief. He kicked in a window, and that's it. So we go to court with just those two offenses. And if the judge finds him guilty, well, perhaps the sentence won't be as strong just because there's only that one other offense. But imagine had we had all the work already done down in Indianapolis, and now we've got 5 different offenses. He smashed a window, he started the car on fire, he did all this other stuff, and the participating in a riot. So we can only charge that participating in a riot charge once. Otherwise, you'll have a double jeopardy situation. So this is where it is. And all these things account for the delay. All these things account for why we need to take the time to do this right.
Because I've spent so many years of my life working with addicts and alcoholics, I keep coming back to this human element of it, and I keep wondering things like, did any of the accused, or almost accused, have any of them realized, hey, I've got a problem, and it isn't just this night. It wasn't just this night, but I've got an ongoing problem. Have you heard about anybody or their families or friends saying, hey, buddy, this is you messed up, but you've been messing up for the last 3 years?
Yeah, I'd assume so. I don't know anything specific, but I would assume that there's lots of a lot of criticism coming, especially on the first batch of rioters, where it's been a very public spectacle. There's been,
it sure has.
Just about daily in the newspapers. Even now, 8 months later, there's stories almost daily, and I'm sure those that have been charged, those that have been are having to face that. And
okay, let's assume and hope that you get lots of convictions, and it's out of our hands at that point, and who goes to jail or whatever penalties people face. Let's move to what people, I can tell, watching this are screaming, Dave, aren't you going to ask about? And that is, what about the next time? Let's say, God willing, the hockey team is so fortunate as to get into another finals. We've had 2 runs at it, both times to 7 games, both times within a hair of winning, and both times some pretty bad behavior. What are the thoughts about pre-building preventative structure now?
Sure, and that's, I think, what the reviews, there's 3 reviews that were completed, and there was a number of recommendations that came out of it, and hopefully some of those recommendations are going to be the silver bullet that's going to stop this from happening in the future.
Like, what would we do?
We
have an army? Do we have a standing army? We're not very good with armies in Canada.
And I know you discussed this with me in the past. Was how many officers would it have taken? And tell you that we've policed. We've policed demonstrations and protests in Vancouver almost 1 a day. There's over 300 a year in Vancouver. I think we do a pretty decent job of it. We've had 17 years since our last riot. I'm not saying that, I mean, one's too many, but how many police officers would it have taken? And the reality of it is we've been in some events where we've had more police officers, like the Olympics, for instance, when the Black Bloc group were out. We've had instances where we had more police officers than protesters, and they were still able to riot. So it's, and you go to countries, certain countries where they actually have military on the ground, where they have thousands of police officers, and they'd still riot. You know, so, you know, it's what we took out of this, and it's if it's any consolation or if it was anything that was positive, is that we were able to suppress it in under 3 hours, which is, you know, less than half the time it took back in '94. Still, you know, I understand there's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of people that suffered damage. The city suffered damage as a result of this.
I have a plan. I'm going to rent a small aircraft, and I'm going to drop leaflets that say, "Grow up."
Sounds like a great plan.
Knock it off.
That's right.
Howard.
Thank you.
Pleasure to see you. Sergeant Howard Chow from Vancouver Police Department. We'll all hope that we don't have to deal with this one again. Next week, thank you for being with us. David Berner is the site to go to. And next week, Daniel Friedman is the CEO of Canada's best, famous, most richest aerospace company. It's called MDA. It used to be McDonnell Detweiler Associates, among other things, the Canada arm and so on. But Daniel is also a bit of a biblical scholar, and he's written a new book in which he tries to reconcile the age-old argument, creation versus science. He believes they're one and the same. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us here on Shaw Community Television, Cable 4.